The pandemic has really done a number on theaters this past year. So much of what I had initially planned has been delayed, and anything worth talking about right now has come out on streaming.
So, where does that leave me? A season that's a hybrid of 2020 and 2021 still needs theatrical releases, and 2021 hasn't exactly left me spoiled for choice. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel for this one. But it fits my criteria as a movie that came out in theaters, so we're rolling with it.
Silk Road is the story of Ross Ulbricht, also known as Dread Pirate Roberts. He ran a website on the darknet called Silk Road, where illegal drugs could be bought and sold. Users use Bitcoin and often use blockchains through the Tor network to access it.
I have no idea how the Tor network works, so don't look at me for an explanation.
He eventually got caught, but the people who investigated him, DEA Special Agent Carl Force and U.S. Secret Service Special Agent Sean Bridges, were both convicted of felonies of theft of assets.
Carl Force.
That's a name for a B-movie cop character if I ever heard one. This movie is meant to be an adaptation of what happened. I had heard the story of Dread Pirate Roberts before, but part of me was curious to see what a movie adaptation would look like. Obviously, a lot of it would have to be made up for a more interesting story, since there's a fair bit of skepticism about what went down. Plus, there isn't a whole lot of public information about him other than his time as the founder of Silk Road.
So with that in mind, how is the movie? Pretty bland.
Nick Robinson does a passable job as Roberts, and Jason Clarke makes the most of his time as the fictional DEA agent, but the movie is about as exciting as someone reading the Wikipedia page on Ulbricht. Not helping matters is that the focus is more on the fictional cop. After the opening logos, we get some text that is meant to be a tongue-in-cheek way of the movie admitting that it's a dramatization. Oh, look at you, aren't you so clever? The movie starts off with how any bad writer starts a movie. Near the end, Ulbricht is at a library, federal agents are posted around the area waiting for him to log into Silk Road so they can nab him, only for a call to come in right before he's about to punch in his password.
Hey, who the fuck is calling him?
Who is this mysterious stranger?
Huh?
Ooh, guess you have to stick around to the end of the movie to find out who that was.
Right away, we're introduced to Ross as an aspiring engineer, spouting libertarian jargon.
I thought we were talking about Obamacare. What the fuck are you talking about?
And making it clear that he doesn't lean to either mainstream American political party.
It doesn't matter how well-intentioned the president is, man. The state cannot legislate what a person can and can't do.
To give the movie credit, it does try to paint Ross as closely to his real-world politics as possible. He's a true believer in freedom and rejecting the increasing bureaucracy of government regulations. The whole reason he creates Silk Road is to challenge said control.
I'm sure there was a better way of doing that than selling meth and heroin using Bitcoin, but different strokes for different folks.
I do have a little issue with who they chose to play Ross. Nick Robinson isn't a bad actor, but he does feel a bit miscast here. I say that because, based on some of the photos I've seen, I feel like Robert Pattinson would have been a better fit. No offense to Robinson, but I feel like he was further down the list of who the filmmakers wanted for the role. While the movie does take very broad creative liberties, it does recount events that did happen in his life, such as Ross's girlfriend at the time breaking up with him after he becomes obsessed with running Silk Road, as well as him being framed for attempted murder by the feds. The movie was written and directed by Tiller Russell, whose most recent credits were The Last Narc and Night Stalker: The Hunt for a Serial Killer, both of which are docuseries.
So it's evident that Tiller Russell is no stranger to adapting true stories.
Which makes it strange because the focus is on DEA agent Rick Bowden, who apparently gets nicknamed Jurassic Narc, because he's not really good with technology despite being assigned to the Cybernetics Crime Unit. This movie's logic is falling apart quickly. Bowden is meant to be the stand-in for the aforementioned DEA and Secret Service agents, the cop in this cat-and-mouse game, going after Dread Pirate Roberts and the ever-expanding Silk Road. Jason Clarke gets top billing in the movie, which meant he got the highest pay out of all the actors, and based on his screen time, he probably got paid by the hour. Rick Bowden becomes more of a central character in this movie than Ross himself.
And this is where the movie runs into a major hurdle.
When you have real people interacting with fictional characters, you risk undermining the integrity of the story, and potentially flat out lying about what happened. I know, a biopic not being the most accurate depiction of real events, what a shocker. Now, I can see why they had this character to be the focus. They wanted someone bad with computers taking on a criminal mastermind who has a big presence on the dark web. There's also the added elements of him being back from rehab, him having a family, really amping up the drama. The funny thing is, his superiors know that he's not the most skilled with cyberspace. They put him there just so he can hang around and retire with a full pension in 9 months. All he really has to do is run out the clock. Rick, being the anti-tech agent that he is, wants to prove that nothing beats traditional detective work, and sets about spearheading a case against Silk Road. It's the classic old-school cop uses tried-and-true methods to undermine the new-school criminal trope.
I was locking up bad guys since before you started shaving your fucking nuts.
Now, maybe old and slow.
But I ain't stupid.
Jason Clarke isn't bad in this movie. In fact, he's one of the most consistent actors out there today. However, his character is very by the numbers and doesn't really stand out. He's a dime a dozen grizzled cop archetype that you've seen many times before. He doesn't always do things by the book. He works around the confines of what's legal rather than within it. A break the law to save it kind of guy. Still, I feel like this was very much a payday movie for him. Jason Clarke has a weird habit of alternating between doing a really good movie and a pretty bad one. Heck, in 2018 he was in one of the worst and best movies of that year. When he puts in the work, it shows.
It feels like he's just one good role away from becoming a household name. But then he immediately follows it up with something awful or just painfully mediocre.
Silk Road falls very much into that last part. Like I said, there isn't a whole lot of information on Ross Ulbricht other than when he ran the Silk Road website. Nick Robinson works with the best of what he's given to do, but it's one of those stories that probably would have best fitted as a documentary instead of a traditional film narrative. It wouldn't have been too hard, again, given Taylor Russell's recent work. Ross and Rick both fall down the proverbial rabbit hole, where Silk Road consumes their lives, Ross being paranoid and overworked, and Rick burying himself into the case to solve it. I suppose now's a good time as any to introduce someone who is far more essential to the plot than most of the supporting cast. Curtis Clarke Green, played by Paul Walter Hauser. Paul Walter Hauser is another actor who I've come to really like seeing in movies. He's best known for playing Richard Jewell in the movie of the same name, but you might also recognize him from I, Tonya and Black Klansman. He plays the sole employee of Silk Road, being hired by Ross after being a dedicated user and seller. This, of course, enables Rick to track him down and coerce him into revealing all of the site's secrets. Rick then meets with Ross in person, pretending to be a disinterested third party and wanting to help. It's not a role with a lot of screen time, but he plays a key part in framing Ross up for murder, playing dead long enough for Rick to send Ross a photo of the body. It's another decent performance, where the actor shows up for work, puts in the effort, but knows what this is and doesn't try and go for the Oscar. Another case of a talented actor not really using his full capabilities. Not because he doesn't care about doing a good job, but because he knows that he doesn't have to pull out the grade A material to fulfill what's needed from him. The movie is edited weird. There will be these moments where we freeze frame and then fade into the next scene. Oh yeah, that freeze frame of him puking was really essential to this dissolve. Eventually, we get to his arrest, meaning we're back at the beginning, and it's revealed that the caller was Agent Bowden, who brags to Ross that he got to him first.
Hello?
I want you to remember one thing. I got to you first, smartass.
Then he's promptly arrested. That's it? That's what the call was all about? What kind of bullshit was that? Anyway, Ross is arrested, and it's not long before Rick follows suit.
And everything they know they learned off a screen, not staring down the barrel of a gun.
Had to leave us with just one more grizzled cop line.
Now we come to the most Hollywoodized ending you can get for a story like this. Both men are convicted, and one day, in the same prison, pass each other in the hall. While the real-life agents were convicted, they weren't put in the same institution as Ross. It's the most faux dramatic, on-the-nose, grasping for a gasp moment in a movie that's already chock full of barely accurate recreations.
Silk Road is a heavily dramatized fictional retelling of what happened. Which wouldn't be so bad if it was actually entertaining.
The actors aren't bad in the parts, but the script doesn't offer much for them to sink their teeth into. The cinematography and lighting are passable, but nothing unique that makes the storytelling more engaging. Based on his previous work, the director seems to understand how to bring a true story to life while making it entertaining, but for some reason he doesn't apply it to this movie. So much of it feels like he's trying to make you empathize with the DEA agent, in that even when he's breaking the law, he's doing it for the greater good. However, a lot of people in real life feel like Ubrich's case was unfair, that he's a victim of one big setup. Currently, there's a movement to get him pardoned, but only time will tell if it happens. There is some mild enjoyment to be had, but unless you're a big fan of the leads, there's not a whole lot I can say that makes it worth your time. It's kind of surprising that this did get a theatrical release, since it's probably best enjoyed if you were streaming it.
Alright, that's my review of Silk Road. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, this is the Canadian Movie Buff saying I hope you had a fantastic weekend at the movies. Now, if you excuse me, I have a book I need to finish. One about a guy who becomes addicted to heroin and robs banks after serving in the Iraq War.